The neon sign of the Neon Anchor Motel buzzed like an angry hornet against the bruised twilight sky, casting a sickly, flickering pink hue across the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. It was the kind of place that didn't ask for your real name, only your cash, and preferably paid in advance. The air smelled of stale rain, baking asphalt, and the unmistakable, lingering tang of cheap ozone. I had been driving for 14 hours straight, my hands welded to the steering wheel of my battered sedan, my eyes burning from the hypnotic glare of endless highway reflectors. By the time I pulled into spot 12, my spine felt like a stack of dry twigs ready to snap. I didn't care about the ambience. I didn't care about the questionable stains on the faded floral bedspread waiting for me inside room 204. I just wanted horizontal gravity and 3 hours of undisturbed oblivion. The manager, a gaunt man with eyes like flat stones and a grease-stained cardigan, slid the heavy brass key across the warped laminate counter without looking up from his static-filled portable television. "Checkout's at 10, he muttered, the words dragging like gravel. "Lock your door. Area's quiet, but people get curious." I gave a tired grunt, took the key, and lugged my duffel bag up the exterior metal staircase. The stairs groaned in protest under my boots, the hollow clang echoing in the damp night air. Room 204 was at the very end of the second-floor breezeway, past a row of flickering security lights that seemed more intent on plunging corners into deeper shadow than actually illuminating anything. I found the door, jammed the heavy key into the brass lock, and turned it with a sharp click. Inside, the room hit me with a wall of stagnant, artificially cooled air. It was a standard-issue roadside relic, a lumpy double bed, a scarred mahogany dresser, a cathode ray tube television sitting on a swivel mount, and a tiny bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. I kicked off my boots, dropped my keys on the small laminate nightstand, and tossed my duffel onto the floor. Every muscle in my body ached, a deep, bone-weary thrum that screamed for release. I shed my damp jacket, kicked off my jeans, and fell face-first onto the bed. The mattress springs groaned beneath me, a familiar, comforting lament. I didn't bother unpacking. I didn't even pull the heavy quilted blanket over my shoulders. I just closed my eyes, surrendered to the gravity of exhaustion, and let the low, mechanical drone of the vintage wall unit air conditioner lull me into a heavy, dreamless sleep. Or at least, I intended to. Time loses its shape when you're that tired. It congeals into a thick, sluggish sludge where minutes feel like hours and hours vanish in a blink. Sometime in the deep, ink-black hours of the morning, somewhere between the witching hour and the first pale smear of dawn, I drifted back toward consciousness. It wasn't a sudden jolt that woke me. It was a subtle shift in the ambient environment. A change in the air pressure. A whisper of sound that didn't belong in the mechanical lullaby of the motel room. I lay completely still, my eyes still closed, my breathing shallow. My mind, still swimming in the hazy borderlands between sleep and wakefulness, tried to rationalize the disturbance. Was it a car door slamming in the lot below? Was it the wind rattling the metal siding outside? Then came the sound. Click. It was a soft, mechanical sound, distinct and deliberate. It was the sound of a latch sliding into a strike plate, followed by the faint, agonizingly slow squeak of hinges that desperately needed oil. A wave of icy adrenaline pierced my veins, instantly burning away the lingering fog of exhaustion. My eyes snapped open. The room was bathed in a dim, eerie twilight cast by the amber security glow filtering through the thin, dusty polyester curtains. I didn't move a muscle. I forced my breathing to remain even, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The door was opening. I left my motel room unlocked. The terrifying realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. When I had stumbled an hours earlier, weighed down by fatigue and desperate for sleep, I had thrown the door shut behind me, assuming the heavy latch would catch. But the latch was worn, the frame warped by decades of humidity and shifting foundations. Without a deliberate, forceful slam or a turn of the deadbolt, the door remained unlatched. A stiff breeze, a settling building, or a slow, careful push from the outside would cause it to drift wide open. And someone had pushed it. A shadow fell across the threshold, cutting a dark, jagged slice into the amber light of the room. It was tall, impossibly still, silhouetted against the dim glow of the exterior breezeway. Panic threatened to paralyze me, but survival instinct took over. I kept my eyes fixed on the ceiling, pretending to be fast asleep, my body limp under the thin sheet. Every nerve ending in my body screamed, hyper-aware of every microscopic detail in the room. The silhouette lingered in the doorway for what felt like an eternity. I could hear the faint, raspy sound of breathing, slow, measured, and agonizingly deliberate. It didn't sound frantic or panicked. It sounded calm, methodical. Then, the shadow stepped inside. The floorboards didn't creak immediately. Whoever it was knew how to walk quietly, testing the stability of the carpeted floor. I felt a sudden shift in the air currents as the intruder moved closer to the bed. The scent that accompanied them was unsettling, not the expected stale alcohol or tobacco of a drifter, but something metallic and sharp, mixed with a damp, earthy smell of wet soil. My heart was beating so violently I was certain the intruder could hear it echoing off the walls. I prayed they wouldn't see the slight rise and fall of my chest beneath the sheet. The footsteps stopped right beside the bed. Right beside my head. I forced myself not to flinch, keeping my eyelids parted by the narrowest of margins, just enough to catch a sliver of the space beside me through my lashes. The figure was standing towering over the mattress, motionless. In the dim light, I couldn't make out facial features, only the dark, imposing mass of a heavy canvas jacket and the faint, dull glint of something held low in a gloved hand. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The figure shifted its weight. A floorboard finally groaned, a soft, dry pop beneath the carpet. Then, a gloved hand descended slowly toward the nightstand. I watched through my slit eyelids as long, dark fingers brushed past my car keys, sliding them aside with a tiny metallic jingle. They weren't looking for valuables. They weren't rifling through my wallet or grabbing my loose cash. They were searching for something specific. Or perhaps, they were just checking to see if I was alone. The hand hovered for a second, then withdrew. The figure turned slowly toward the foot of the bed, moving with an eerie, predatory grace. My mind raced through options with desperate speed. Could I leap up and make a break for the door? It was only 10 feet away, but the intruder was standing directly between me and the exit. Could I grab something to defend myself? There was a heavy glass ashtray on the dresser, but the dresser was on the far side of the room. I was trapped. Then, the intruder did something that sent a fresh wave of terror through my chest. They moved toward the bathroom door, pushing it open with a soft click. The faint light from the main room spilled into the tiny tiled space. I heard the rustle of the plastic shower curtain being pulled back, followed by the dull tap of fingers against the porcelain tub. They are checking the hiding spots. The realization was chilling. This wasn't a random crime of opportunity by a wandering thief. This was intentional. Methodical. The intruder had entered the room knowing someone was inside, or at least suspecting it, and was taking precautions to secure their environment. I knew I only had a few seconds while their back was turned. Without thinking, my muscles coiled like springs. I slipped my hand out from under the sheet, sliding it slowly, agonizingly slowly, across the mattress toward the nightstand. My fingers brushed the edge of the laminate wood. I stretched further, my fingertips grazing the cold metal of my car keys. Clink. The sound was tiny, microscopic, but in the dead silence of the room, it sounded like a gunshot. The movement in the bathroom instantly stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. The low hum of the air conditioner seemed to vanish, swallowed by a heavy, suffocating vacuum. I froze, my hand still outstretched, my fingers inches from the keys. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. A dark shape appeared in the bathroom doorway. The intruder was standing there, perfectly still, staring directly at the bed. For a terrifying second, our eyes locked. Though I couldn't see theirs, I could feel the intense, focused weight of their gaze piercing through the dimness. They knew. They knew I was awake. They knew I had moved. The figure stepped out of the bathroom, abandoning all pretense of stealth. The slow, deliberate steps began again, but this time, they carried an unmistakable sense of urgency. The casual observer was gone. The predator was advancing. Panic overrode caution. I lunged forward, grabbing my keys off the nightstand just as a heavy hand slammed down onto the mattress where my head had been a second before. I scrambled backward, kicking out wildly with my legs. My heel connected with something solid, A grunt of surprise escaped the intruder as my foot caught them square in the chest. Taking advantage of the momentary stumble, I vaulted off the opposite side of the bed, hitting the floor hard on my hands and knees. I didn't hesitate. I scrambled toward the door, my bare feet slipping on the worn carpet, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Behind me, heavy footsteps thudded heavily across the floorboards. A hand caught the back of my shirt, tearing the fabric, but I twisted violently, ripping free and lunging forward with every ounce of strength I had left. I slammed my shoulder into the wooden door, bursting out onto the second-floor breezeway just as the cold night air hit my face like a splash of ice water. I didn't look back. I didn't care about my shoes, my jacket, or my duffel bag. I sprinted toward the metal staircase, my bare feet slapping furiously against the cold iron steps as I descended into the parking lot. The neon sign of the Neon Anchor Motel buzzed overhead, casting its sickly pink light across the empty asphalt as I threw myself toward my car, frantically stabbing my keys into the lock, praying to whatever gods were listening that the engine would turn over on the first try.